I'm Catherine, and I'm going to be attempting to go through every reason why the JWST has been delayed. Since I only have about 10 minutes, I'm going to be going through this pretty quickly, so apologies if I talk too fast. But we saw this graph at the beginning. You can see as the year, practically each year, the expected launch date has been moved. So we're going to go through why that is. So,
Make that noise every time.
yeah, no, it's fine. So in '91, we had the decadal survey, and it listed a large space telescope as one of the priorities. This actually followed up on a 1989 workshop where they talked about the Next Generation Space Telescope as being one of the primary things that we should be focusing on in science. So at this time, it was a successor to Hubble, a 6-meter aperture, and saying a wideband UV visible IR. And they estimated that the cost would be about $2 billion, which with the launch date, first decade of next century. So we know how that goes. But that's what they said, and this was the first time it was mentioned in a decadal survey. In '96 is when they actually started officially working on the project as saying like, hey, we're actually making a telescope. So it's called the Next Generation Space Telescope. This is an early concept drawing of what they expected it to look like. At this time, they were saying it was an 8 to 16 meter aperture is what they were shooting for. As far as I can tell, they already planned NIRCam, NIRSpec, MIRI, and the FGS NIRIS. So as far as I can tell, those instruments have all been in the original plan from the beginning, or at least variations of those. Really interesting thing, at this point they say the cost is half a billion dollars. Don't know how they got down to that from the $2 billion that the decadal survey thought they were gonna have, so don't know where they got that number from, but they estimated launch date of 2007. Then in 2001, we have the second time it's mentioned in a decadal survey. So they said that the Next Generation Space Telescope was the highest priority. It still said an 8-meter aperture, although at this point, some people were trying to push for downgrading it to a 4.5 meter, because they said for cost reasons, you know, it would be cheaper. But there was a lot of pushback because that wouldn't be a huge benefit over what we've had with Hubble, so that didn't go through. But they were in phase A, which was the preliminary analysis of design, and by now the cost has already increased to 1.8 billion, and the launch date has already been moved to 2009. This is not from 2001, but a full-size model of it. So you can see already, like as they're actually going through the plan, things are starting to be more expensive. 2002 is when they officially renamed it as James Webb Space Telescope. It's now officially a 6.5 meter aperture. They're into phase B, which is the detailed design studies. Cost is 2.5 billion already, so that's fun. And you can see that they're already having to delay it further. So launch date is now 2010, with the delay being cited as funding and technology development, as in they're literally having to wait for technology to keep up for them to be able to make the mirrors and all of the other instruments. So 2004, construction on the instruments and the mirror actually began. Cost was still 2.5 billion, but as you can see, launch date has already been delayed again. So the delay this time is again listed as funding. That's basically the reason why they said they were delaying it for a very long time, was just, we don't have enough funding, even though, you know, they're already up to $3 billion by 2005. And as you can see, launch date has already been pushed off to 2013. This time, the delay is listed as being overrun by Northrop Grumman. They really love throwing NG under the bus, and they weren't getting a free launch from ESA on the Ariane 5 rocket. Don't really know why they were going to get a free launch from them, but apparently they had some deal in the works that didn't work. So have to now figure that out of how they're paying to actually launch the thing.
Are they paying them now?
They're doing something. 2006, all the technology developments passed the non-advocate review, so that was an outside review making sure everything was good to go, that this was actually going to be able to happen. MIRI did take a little bit longer to pass. They had to work through some things, so it took a bit longer, but completed the preliminary design review. So good to go. All the instruments are going to be happening. Cost is $4.5 billion, but that's fine, although launch date is now 2014. And during this time, you'll notice as cost is increasing. At this point already, this is the year the Dawn mission was canceled by NASA due to lack of funding. But you know, that's fine. We just jumped $1.5 billion for JWST. Why not cancel a mission because it doesn't have the funding for it? 2008, they have a confirmation review, which basically is just asking the question. So they have moved from into phase C and D, which is their actually detailed design, procurement, testing, assembly, all of that. The confirmation review is going through and saying, hey, how are the instruments doing? Is this going to work? What's all doing? And they decided, yeah, we can for sure get with 5.1 billion. We're going to get a launch date of 2014 for sure. Everything's chill. And then things start getting serious in 2010. So they bring in an independent review board to go over everything. It passed the mission critical design review at this point, but the independent comprehensive review panel looked at it and went, hey, there's no way you're making this thing for less than 6.5 billion. You're not going to be launching until probably 2016 at the earliest. They put a lot of the weight of this on the astrophysics division because they weren't splitting up funding properly. They said there was a lack of effective oversight. There were two fundamental mistakes made at the time of confirmation, the last review that they had done, basically saying you're not funding it properly and you're not giving oversight to actually be sure that these things are happening in the way that they're supposed to. So at this point, they also said the delay was hardware and testing not completed, but apparently on track. And then they basically, the conclusion was the project is mismanaged and chronically underfunded, which, you know, we're at 6.5 billion, but sure, we're underfunded.
The director was from there.
Yeah. Then
John Moore.
we get to 2011, which is the third decadal survey that it is mentioned in. It is no longer listed as a priority, but it is still mentioned as, hey, this is a thing that we're working on. Funding is being moved from other NASA projects to fund this, which, you know, the people on those other missions are not happy about, but to damage science for such a small contribution for the rest of the agency would not be very responsible. This is about the increase of $1.5 billion being taken from other projects in NASA. But sure, it's a small contribution. So as you can imagine, there's some tension building with other scientists, as the cost is now $8.7 billion to fund the Army of Scientists and Engineers, and having to keep a higher than usual reserve for unforeseen problems that could come up later on. And the launch date has been pushed off to 2018. So 2015, we've skipped ahead. Cost is now $8.8 billion. And the launch date is still 2018. They had a delay with the cryo cooler, but they're still like, yeah, 2018, we're good. It's more challenging than we've anticipated, but we've made great progress. Okay, Jeff. Now, this is when it starts getting good. So, construction is finished. Launch date, late 2018. John Mather, one of the primary scientists, he said, we've done 2 decades of innovation and hard work, and this is the result. I probably say that in a very different tone than he did, because I think he was like happy about it, but you know, it's been 2 decades and this is where we're at. So now, 2017, we got a delay. It's now pushed off. It's no longer launching in 2018. It's March to June of 2019, because the integration is taking a bit longer than they were expecting. You know, it's just a casual thing. Then we get 2018 delay. Now it's pushed off. It's May of 2020. There's testing and setbacks, including tears in the tennis court size sun shield. That was Northrop Grumman's problem. Review board is brought in at this point and finds 344 potential single point failures. So they make recommendations of here's how you can make it better so that this doesn't happen. There's also a House Science Committee hearing where they ripped Northrop Grumman a new one and asked the question, is it worth all those other projects that we've been unable to fund in this committee because you have failed your job? They treated NASA a lot better in those hearings. And then we get a 2019 delay. Now it's March of 2021. Review board follows up on recommendations. 2 of them are still inadequate. But mechanical integration is completed just 12 years after originally planned. Cost is now $9.7 billion. And ensuring every element properly functions before it gets to space is critical for its success. Casual. And then we get COVID. So 2020, it's not launching. Now it's October of 2021, but COVID's not going to be here for long. So we're for sure going to launch. And it's an unprecedented mission for unprecedented times. He didn't say unprecedented times, but this was June of 2020. We all know why that word was in his vocabulary. So thanks for that, Tom. But it's for sure launching in October. And then we get to June. Now they're like, no, it's no earlier than November. There's issues with the launch vehicle and site readiness. All of these must work or the instrument will fail. No pressure. But no earlier than November. Technically speaking, this wasn't a delay because this is when they actually just set the date. But they're like, December 18th, it's actually going to happen. Don't worry. It gets to the site. We're all good. No pirates. Everything's fine. We're for sure launching in December. It's going to happen this time, guys. Yeah. So I laughed out loud at a Target when I saw this. At this point, I'd be more shocked if it does launch on the 22nd than if it doesn't. So there was a recent incident where they dropped the instrument. So,
It was a class.
Yeah, but there were vibrations and they didn't have the sensors on it to see if anything's damaged. So that's fine. So if it launches on the 22nd, I'm gonna buy somebody dinner. It's probably gonna be me, but it's gonna happen. So that's where we're at. It's been delayed so many times, primarily due to funding. We're now at $10 billion. Allegedly, it's gonna launch on the 22nd, but I'm not holding my breath. These are all of the references that I used. That is a very small font because there were so many of them. And these are the songs that were used in my presentation. Thank you.